If you ask me, the most profound mysteries in our favorite soap opera do not involve international espionage or the endless machinations of the WSB. The most gripping enigmas are the ones walking right past us in the halls of the police station. We have all been so distracted by the high-stakes chaos surrounding the Sidwell trap that we might be completely missing a ghost haunting the precinct. I am looking right at Joe. On the surface, he is just another dedicated detective, a guy trying to piece together delayed intel. But if we peel back the layers of his sudden integration into the fabric of this town, a much more staggering possibility emerges. What if the man wearing that badge is carrying a legacy of mob violence, unimaginable grief, and a shattered identity? What if he is a Corinthos? Let us look at the current landscape. We know Joe has been heavily involved in recent investigations, working shoulder to shoulder with Dante. They have been speculating about inside men and tracking down GPS logs. It is standard police work, but the proximity to Dante is what catches my eye. This is where it gets interesting. I have a strong theory that Joe is not just a random cop who transferred in with a clean slate. I believe that as he spends more time in these familiar environments, surrounded by the intense energy that defines this town, dormant memories are going to start clawing their way to the surface. My central thesis today is that Joe is actually Morgan, suffering from profound, years-long amnesia after that devastating car bomb, and that his subconscious is desperately trying to lead him home. The human brain is a vault, and Dante's presence is the key. Memory is a fickle, fragile thing, especially when it has been shattered by catastrophic physical and emotional trauma. We have seen characters lose their minds and their identities only to have them triggered by the most mundane, unexpected things. I envision a highly specific, deeply emotional catalyst for this impending revelation. Picture this scenario unfolding at the police station. Joe and Dante are burning the midnight oil at the precinct, poring over case files, perhaps arguing over a frustrating lead, and in a moment of unguarded frustration, Joe slips up. He calls Dante by a very specific, historically loaded nickname. He calls him Dominic. For longtime viewers, that name hits like a freight train. That was the alias Dante used when he first infiltrated the organization. And more importantly, it was a name that Morgan affectionately and sometimes mockingly used for his older brother when they were navigating their complicated bond. There is absolutely no logical reason for a seemingly unconnected detective to pull that specific name out of thin air. If Joe were just a regular guy from another precinct, the name Dominic would mean absolutely nothing to him. When that slip happens, I can already see the look of absolute paralysis washing over Dante. This seasoned cop who faced down assassins without blinking would be completely frozen by a single word. This is a perfect example of how the writers can anchor a massive, sweeping storyline in a tiny, intimate moment. Dante would not just brush it off as a bizarre coincidence. His sharp detective instincts, coupled with his deep, unresolved grief for his younger brother, would immediately kick into overdrive. It is one thing to suspect a stranger of hiding a secret. It is another entirely to look into a colleague's eyes and suddenly see the ghost of the brother you mourned and buried years ago. Once that seed of doubt is planted, Dante will not be able to let it go. We know Dante is meticulous and deeply protective of his family. He knows exactly how to conduct a quiet, off-the-books investigation. I imagine Dante quietly digging into the background of his partner, pulling old records and searching for discrepancies. What he will likely find is a massive hole in the narrative. I suspect he will uncover that Joe suffered a catastrophic trauma years ago, perhaps surviving a horrific explosion that left him without a single memory of who he was. John Doe, who eventually built a new life and joined the police force, completely unaware that his real family was grieving over an empty casket. The timeline of this mysterious trauma would perfectly align with the tragic explosion that supposedly took Morgan. But it is not just about the cold, hard evidence in a personnel file. It is about the emotional gravity that certain people exert on each other. Have you guys noticed how the universe always seems to pull the Corinthos family back together, no matter how fractured they become? As Joe's mental walls begin to crack under the weight of his returning memories, I believe he will start experiencing an inexplicable, magnetic pull towards Sonny and Carly. He will not understand why, but being in their presence will evoke a visceral reaction. He might feel an overwhelming sense of safety, or perhaps a suffocating wave of anxiety, emotions that are inextricably linked to the chaotic, passionate love of his true parents. The show has a brilliant way of illustrating these unspoken bonds, where the heart remembers what the mind has completely forgotten, and Joe will find himself inexplicably drawn to the very people who have spent years mourning his absence. Imagine the psychological torment Joe must be going through in this scenario. He is a man of the law, someone who relies on facts, concrete evidence, and clear-cut truths to make sense of the world. Yet, he is being haunted by fragmented, terrifying visions of a life that feels like it belongs to someone else entirely. He might start having flashes of the boathouse, the coffee warehouse, or the blinding, terrifying heat of a car bomb detonating. I can see a powerful, emotionally charged scene where Joe, completely overwhelmed by these fragmented visions and the physical toll they are taking on him, actually confides in Dante. He might confess that every time he crosses paths with Sonny or Carly, his chest tightens and he feels a bizarre, irrational conviction that they are his family. This vulnerable confession would be the ultimate confirmation for Dante, transforming his suspicion into a terrifying, hopeful reality. Now, I have to pause and play devil's advocate with my own theory for a moment. Are we just projecting our desperate desire for a beloved character's return onto a convenient blank slate? What if Joe is genuinely just Joe? Maybe he is a former undercover cop who read about the Dominic alias in an old case file during a late-night research session. Maybe his past trauma is completely unrelated to the mob, and his connection to Sonny and Carly is just the natural empathy of a dedicated police officer dealing with a family that has suffered immense public loss. We have been burned before by red herrings, lookalikes, and cruel twists of fate. It is entirely possible that this is just a trick of coincidence, designed by the writers to tug at our nostalgic heartstrings without delivering the actual resurrection we are craving. I have to admit the creators love to mislead us, and setting Joe up as a false hope would be a devastating narrative trick. However, despite those lingering doubts, the narrative breadcrumbs are just too compelling to ignore. The emotional payoff of having Morgan return, not as a mob prince, but as an officer of the law, is too rich a storytelling vein to leave untapped. Morgan, the boy who was destroyed by the violence of his father's criminal world, is reborn as a man dedicated to stopping that very violence. The irony is poetic and deeply tragic. And Dante is the absolute perfect conduit for this revelation. He is the bridge between the law and the mob, the brother who has always struggled to balance his badge with his bloodline. For Dante to be the one to discover that his lost brother is now walking the exact same precarious tightrope is a masterclass in character development and thematic resonance. So, how does Dante prove it? He cannot just walk up to his father and say he firmly believes his dead son is sitting at the next desk over at the precinct. The emotional fallout if he is wrong would be catastrophic and unforgivable. Sonny is already dealing with so much betrayal, paranoia, and shifting alliances in his quest to regain power. Carly is fiercely guarding her remaining children and navigating her own complicated, secretive romances. Dropping a psychological bomb like this without absolute, irrefutable proof would be cruel. Therefore, Dante will undoubtedly take matters into his own hands, executing a covert DNA test. I can clearly picture him swiping a coffee cup from Joe's desk and matching it against a sample he secretly obtains from Sonny. The suspense of waiting for those lab results would be agonizing, not just for Dante, but for all of us watching at home, holding our breath for the truth. When that piece of paper finally confirms a genetic match, the weight of the entire world will crash down on Dante's shoulders. He will be holding the power to completely upend the lives of everyone he loves, shattering their reality in an instant. This is not just a happy reunion, it is a profound disruption. How do you tell a mother who has grieved so deeply, who has fundamentally changed and hardened her heart because of that specific loss, that her baby boy has been alive this whole time, living in the same town? How do you tell a powerful, volatile mob boss that the son he thought he killed through his own dangerous lifestyle choices is actually a cop working to dismantle criminal empires? Dante will have to navigate a treacherous minefield of trauma, guilt, and shock to deliver this news. It is a massive burden that only an older brother could possibly carry. The moment of the actual reveal has the potential to be one of the most iconic, unforgettable scenes in the history of the show. I do not see it happening in a crowded room, a bustling hospital hallway, or a public setting like the Metro Court. It needs to be intimate, raw, and devastatingly quiet. I envision Dante bringing Joe to a private space, perhaps the very cemetery where the empty grave lies, or a quiet, dimly lit corner of the family home. When Dante finally looks at Joe, presents the evidence, and calls him Morgan, the emotional dam will completely break. The realization that his entire life as Joe has been a coping mechanism, a fragile shell built to protect a fractured mind from unimaginable pain, will be a terrifying awakening. The transition from Joe, the confident detective, to Morgan, the deeply scarred son, will require incredible nuance. The aftermath of this revelation will send massive shockwaves through every relationship in town. Morgan returning is not a simple reset button that fixes the past. He is not the same boy who died in that fiery explosion. He has lived years as a completely different person, forming his own morals and his own identity as a police officer. How does he reconcile the badge he wears with the criminal empire his father continues to run? Will he resent Sonny and Carly for the life he was forced to forget, blaming them for the danger that stole his memories? Will he eventually embrace his Corinthos blood, or will he reject it entirely, clinging desperately to the honorable, straightforward life he built as Joe? This intense internal conflict will be the driving force of his character arc for years to come. It forces the entire family to confront the harsh reality that you cannot just pick up where you left off when death has supposedly separated you for so long. Ultimately, this storyline represents the very core of what makes this drama so relentlessly compelling. The inescapable, complicated nature of family, the enduring, invisible scars of trauma, and the miraculous, sometimes incredibly painful, journey of finding one's way back home. If Joe truly is the ghost of the past made flesh, his resurrection will challenge everything we know about these characters and their motivation. It is a powerful testament to the idea that love and blood can transcend even the darkest, most absolute voids of memory. But it also begs a haunting, lingering question that we must all consider. When the dust finally settles, the DNA is confirmed, and the tears of reunion dry, who will actually be left standing in the mirror? Is it truly possible for Morgan to ever fully come back to us, or will the man we knew forever be buried beneath the badge, the trauma, and the borrowed life of a stranger named Joe? That is the tragedy and the beauty of surviving in this town.
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.